Parshat Shemot. It says in the Torah, the children of Israel were fruitful and the land became filled with them. I have a friend who became religious in New York City. He'd been attending synagogue on a fairly regular basis, and one day he was leaving the shul after the morning service. He was returning the paper yarmulke to its place at the shul's entrance when he decided he wanted to wear his newfound religiosity more openly. So leaving the shul, he turned not towards his apartment, but in the other direction. And within a few moments, he found himself at the door of a Jewish bookshop. At the end of the counter, there was a carousel that carried the entire gamut of Orthodox Jewish headgear. Approaching the carousel, he began to turn it slowly, and he was amazed at the range of choices. There were white kippot and green ones, black ones, knitted ones, leather ones, velvet ones, cloth ones, and those that looked like they come off the head of an Afghan sheep herd. Which one am I going to choose, he thought to himself. Little did he realize he was about to enter a political minefield. Without thinking too much about it, he picked up a large black velvet couple and plonked it on his head. Making his way to the cashier, he paid for his new yarmulke, walked out into the street and stopped in his tracks. Everything had changed. He'd changed. The world had changed. He thought to himself, I've become an ambassador. I've become an ambassador for the Jewish people. Everything I do now will be judged through the lens of my Jewishness. If I push in line, people won't say, who's this guy pushing in line? They'll say, who's this Jew pushing in line? And if I give up my seat to an old lady on the subway, if old ladies still venture onto the subway, I'll have sanctified the name of heaven. Little do we realize that the good name of the Jewish people, and along with them, the God of the Jewish people, rests on a small piece of cloth perched precariously on our heads. Parshat Shemot marks the beginning of the birth of a nation. The Haggadah teaches that the Jewish people were outstanding, Mitsuyanim, in Egypt. They didn't change their dress, their names, or their language. They were a very visible and very distinct minority. As we were born, so we continue. Every interaction that a uniformed Jew has with the world at large has the potential to sanctify the name of heaven, and it can be done in the smallest of ways. I've seen this same friend go to the garbage collectors, even though he doesn't live in the area, and say, thank you. The other day he was in an art shop. He was looking for a very, very fine paintbrush. He found 4 number 0000s, the smallest ones. To save himself another trip to the art store, he took all of them. In line to pay, he noticed that the cashier, a young lady with spiked hair and the color of a depressed-looking Barbie doll, was looking at him with an expression of mild distaste. So handing the brushes to her, he remarked, I took the last of these brushes. You may want to reorder them so you'll have them in stock when the next person comes along. The assistant looked up at him for a second and smiled. We're all ambassadors for our nation.